My 4-year-old Beckham is constantly asking me questions about how things got here. How did that tree get so big? Where do cars come from? Why are there cows? His questions make me realize how little I actually know about the world and why things are the way they are. Too often I find myself relying on Siri, the omniscient Apple iPhone voice, for help. I don't know, Beckham. Hey, Siri, how fast do cheetahs run? Although often trivial, his questions represent the larger human search for purpose and meaning in this crazy world. Questions never really go away the older we get, only more complicated. How did the world get this way? Why do we exist? Where is all of this headed? I wish we had a Siri for the big questions in life. But maybe we don't need an all-knowing iPhone to help us figure out the mysteries of the universe. Maybe they are easier to understand than we think. For all those questions I all too often fail to answer adequately, Beckham has a simple answer that silences all my hemming and hawing. I know why that tree is so big. Oh, really, buddy? Why? God. I smile at his simplicity. Well, I begin, yes, but that tree started off as a seed, and then that seed broke apart, and then sunlight and water, and I already know, Dad. He cuts me off. It's God. If there's anything that my 4-year-old is convinced of, it's this. Everything that exists because of God. No further explanation needed. Some scoff and roll their eyes at such naivety. Others smile and remark, "Oh, how cute. Isn't that darling?" But he may be a better theologian than they realize. He certainly is in line with the author of Colossians, who writes in chapter 1, verses 11 through 20. Being strengthened, another way you could say that is, may you be strengthened, being strengthened with all power according to his glorious might, so that you may have great endurance and patience, and giving joyful thanks to the Father who has qualified you to share in the inheritance of his holy people in the kingdom of light. For he has rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of the Son he loves, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Would you pray with me this morning? Father, as we engage with your scriptures, as we enter into your very word, I pray that you would open the eyes of our hearts, that we may hear something from you, that our thoughts today would be honoring to you, and Father, that you would teach us what it means to be your people. We believe that that's what you do here in this moment. Form us, shape us, and mold us into the image of your Son, Christ. In your name that we pray, amen. The author of Colossians is writing in response to a distortion of the gospel, something called Gnosticism. The Gnostics believe, first, that matter is evil. Matter is evil. And matter is physical substance. Anything that you can touch is made of matter. So this pulpit, it's matter. Me and you, your bodies, this is matter. Those chairs, the trees outside, the dirt that you pick up, anything that's physical in our universe is made of matter. And the Gnostics believe that matter was evil. Therefore, the God who created this world, because the world is matter, right? The God who created this world must also be evil. And so they distinguish the God of the Old Testament from Jesus in the New Testament. The Gnostics believe that there was a head God somewhere way, way out there in the universe who was pure spirit. And they believed that this head God would send forth from himself something called emanations. The God who created this world was one of those emanations from this head God. Jesus was one too, so they say, but he was a good emanation. They believed that Jesus' primary message was to throw off the physical and embrace the spiritual, thus his death on the cross, the crucifying of the physical and embracing of the spiritual. And a similar process, they said, could lead you back to the head God as well, that that's where all this was headed, that when you crucified yourself, like Jesus did, that you would return to your spiritual nature and one day make it back to this head God. That's what the Gnostics were teaching. But along with all the other Christians, the author of Colossians adamantly rejected the teachings of the Gnostics. They rejected it because the dangerous part of their philosophy is that it reduces Christ to simply another God in a universe full of gods. That's what it reduces Jesus to. It reduces Christ to a mere part of a much bigger plan, a cog in the machine. But the author of Colossians is clear. Jesus is not a cog in the machine. Jesus is the head of the machine. The machine exists because of Jesus. He's not a cog in anybody's machine. Everything that exists because of Jesus Christ. Everything that exists finds its purpose and meaning in Jesus Christ. Everything that exists will be brought to examination through Jesus. He is the past, he is the present, and he is the future of all things. That's who Jesus is. So allow the author of Colossians to be your Siri this morning. He has the answer to all the questions you have been asking yourselves. Why is the world the way it is today? How did we get this way? Why do you exist? Where is all of this life heading? The answer is Christ. The answer to all your questions is Christ. And we, the church, are in the hands. We are in the hands of this cosmic Christ. And when you are in the hands of the cosmic Christ, you are strengthened, the writer says, with three wonderful gifts. You are strengthened with the gift of endurance. And you are strengthened with the gift of patience. And you are strengthened with the gift of joy. The author of Colossians says first that we are strengthened with the gift of endurance. The Greek word for endurance is a word that I can't pronounce right now. Upomene. Upomene. One commentator says it means not only the ability to bear things, but the ability in bearing them to turn them into glory. It is a conquering patience, he says. It is the ability to deal triumphantly with anything that life can do to us. That's endurance in the New Testament. And the early church desperately needed this endurance as well. The early church needed that type of endurance. Not only were they challenged with the false teachings of the Gnostics, but they were also challenged by their place in the broader Greco-Roman society. The early church was utterly powerless. They had no power whatsoever in the world they were living in. They were the bottom of the totem pole in their culture. They often felt the pressure of those thrones and dominions and rulers and powers of the world to reject Christianity and return to the status quo. And that happened to Christians very, very often. To follow Christ meant that you left everything behind to follow this Jesus, and the pressure was constant to return back to the life you once knew. The author of Colossians therefore writes to strengthen them and remind them that they belong to a kingdom and a king that reigns over everything. All those powers and rulers and dominions and authorities that you are worried about, that you seem to be powerless in regard to, don't worry about it, because the Jesus you are following rules over all of them. You are answering to a higher authority than anything else that you are facing right now. Although they may appear powerless, they are actually powerful because they belong to the cosmic Christ. Therefore, they were exhorted to endure. Endure all pressure and persecution, no matter the cost, because eventually they knew that that endurance would lead to triumph and to victory. And we are called to do the same thing in our world today. You know, when a woman is in labor, what is it that helps her endure the pain of childbirth? It's what's about to come, right? It's about the gift that the woman is about to receive. It's not the epidural, although that helps. So I've been told. That helps. It's what will result of the labor, a child, an infant, a baby. A mother endures the suffering of labor because she knows that at the conclusion of it, she will receive the wonderful gift of new life. And isn't that very similar for Christians too? We endure hardships and trials and suffering and labor because we know that in the end we are going to have new life. That's the same mindset all Christians are called to. Wherever you're at in your faith, whatever you are struggling with, endure. Whatever challenges you are facing, endure. Continue to pursue Jesus' calling on your life, as tough as it may be, because endurance will lead to victory, because you are in the hands of the cosmic Christ. Closely related to endurance, the author of Colossians also says that we are strengthened with the gift of patience. Endurance, patience, two sides of the same coin, often. And it's often translated this way, and you may relate to this translation of that word this way. Patience is often translated long suffering. That's a great sensory description of patience, isn't it? Think of the most frustrating person in your life right now. Who's the most frustrating person in your life? You might be going, they're sitting right next to me. Who's the most frustrating person in your life? Perhaps a friend, family member, but for whatever reason, they're yours. You have been given this person. Your relationship, though, requires that you long suffer and have patience with them. The basic meaning of the word is exactly that. A commentator states that patience is the quality of mind and heart which enables us to cope with people in such a way that their unpleasantness and malice and cruelty will never drive us to despair, that their folly will never drive us to irritation, and that their unloveliness will never alter our love. That's patience. It is the spirit which never loses patience with, belief in, and hope for others. Now that's a nice sentiment, but have you ever been to Walmart and stood in line when only 2 registers are open? Especially during this time of year in our Sunday school group, we were just talking about going to the store this time of year and what a bad decision that is, but also what a necessary, you can develop patience in the stores right now. I'm not sure that the author of Colossians ever had the pleasure of standing in line at Walmart. Have you ever stood in line at the DMV? All patience goes out the window at the DMV. In fact, here's a clip from the cartoon movie Zootopia that perfectly depicts what long-suffering and patience feels like at the DMV. Jeff?
Actually, I just remembered I have a pal at the DMV. Flash is the fastest guy in there. You need something done, he's on it.
I hope so. We are really fighting the clock and every minute counts. Wait. They're all sloths? Quick.
Well, are you saying that because he's a sloth, he can't be fast? I thought in Zootopia anyone could be anything. Flash, 100-yard dash. Buddy, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you, too.
Hey, Flash, I'd love you to meet my friend. Darling, I've forgotten your name.
Officer Judy Hobbs, CPD, how are you?
I am doing just
Fine?
as well as I can be. What
Hang in there.
can I do
Well, I was hoping you could run a play.
for you
Well, I was hoping you could.
today?
Well, I was hoping you could run a play for us. We are in a really big hurry.
Sure. What's the plate
29
number?
29 THD 03.
Two, 9,
THD 03.
All right, that's enough,
T.
Jeff. It's too painful to watch. That's good. It is painful, right? That's a little excruciating to watch because you've been there and you're going, I was just there. I was in that line. You've been there before. Patience is hard, and it doesn't come naturally. In fact, patience is only possible as a spiritual gift. I think that's the only way that patience is really possible, as a spiritual gift that derives from our relationship with Jesus Christ, because patience is actually rooted in the character of Christ himself. It is said that on the cross, Jesus saw all the sins of humanity, past, present, and future. Jesus saw all the sins of humanity. He saw every sin that we would ever commit. He saw every sin that you personally would ever commit. And even then, he stayed his place. He saw all of your sins. And I don't know about you, but I've done some sinning in my life too. And Jesus stayed his place on that cross for me. And he died for me. And if Christ had the patience to endure the cross for our sake, and if it is the cosmic Christ that we now find our strength in, then the gift of patience, that gift of patience is now yours to give to others. That's what it means to be in the hands of the cosmic Christ. Because we're in the hands of the cosmic Christ, we are strengthened with that gift of endurance. We are strengthened with the gift of patience, but we are also strengthened with the gift of joy. Don't forget about that one, the gift of joy. Again, the commentator makes a distinction between Christian joy and worldly joy. Worldly joy only occurs when things are going well. Worldly joy is found only on the mountaintops of life. But Christian joy is found even in the valleys. The Christian joy, he writes, is joy in any circumstances. Christian joy is something which all the shadows of life can never quench. But how is joy found even amidst shadows and valleys? How is that even possible to find joy in all the negatives of life? Again, the answer is found in the fact of the cosmic Jesus, because we know the hands that hold us. Because we know that life has meaning and purpose through Him. Because we know that the suffering we endure and the patience we bear are all adding up to something. Because we know that standing above all those powers and rulers and authorities is the Jesus that loves us and died for us and is pulling all of time toward Himself, because we know that the one in whom everything has its end and in whom we have victory, because we know that Christ, we can rejoice. We can rejoice because we are not in the hands of a hopeless world. We are in the hands of an already victorious Christ. I love the lyrics to the famous gospel hymn, "His eye is on the sparrow. Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart feel lonely and long for heaven and home when Jesus is my portion? I sing because I'm happy. And I sing because I'm free. His eye is on, yes, even the sparrow. And if His eye is even on the sparrow, then I know He watches me. The Christian prayer is thus: make me, O Lord, victorious in every circumstance. Make me patient with every person, and give me the joy which no circumstance and no one will ever take from me. That's the Christian prayer. That is the prayer of a person that knows that they're in the hands of Christ. Do you know the hands that are holding you? Do you know them? Don't lose another sleepless night troubled by the maddening questions of life. Find your strength by placing your life in the hands of Christ. Because whether you give yourself freely to Christ or not, the author of Colossians is clear about one thing: you will find yourself there one way or another. The question is, will it be your choice or not? Pray with me.